And then there's a bunch of people in the attendees that need to be let in too.
Okay, Bruce, you're live.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the November 21st meeting of the Washington County Committee for Community Involvement, otherwise known as the CCI. We are having a virtual meeting tonight, and so we welcome anybody new for the first time, and certainly the old timers that have been faithful in coming to this are appreciated too. Tonight, I would like to just start off with our featured speaker, and we will deal with business later. Let's set back and learn what the Oregon public meeting laws are and what our responsibilities to them are. And so to help us do that, we have Courtney Duke-Dreisen from the Washington County Legal Department, the County Council. So Courtney, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me tonight. As I was just saying, some of you may not have been fully online yet or had your audio up, but I believe Christina is going to help me by sharing the slides that were also sent to you all via email earlier today. Is ready, Christina? While she gets ready, I just again want to introduce myself for the record. My name is Courtney Duke-Dreisen, and I serve as Deputy County Counsel in the Office of County Counsel for Washington County. I'm very happy to be here with you tonight. This is not my favorite medium to do this sort of talk because it's very hard to see you all. So I want to just say at the onset that I think that these discussions are best when they're interactive. It's boring if I just speak at you. I really encourage you, if you feel comfortable, to interrupt me with either questions or comments as they arise for you. Also want to recognize that, that's not everyone's preferred method of communication. So if you want to jot notes at the bottom or on your own notes as we go along, I certainly hope to have a few minutes at the end to answer those questions, or you can reach out to me privately as well to answer some questions for you. But because I can't see you all very well in this format, please feel free to just interrupt me, or perhaps Christina can help me see if anyone has a raised hand function and interrupt me on your behalf.
Well, thank you very much. I think that the raised hand protocol is what I would like to encourage people to use. We pretty much, and Zoom is good about bringing that to the front of the list. So,
great. Well, if I don't see them, it's hard to look at my notes, and I can only see like 4 squares. So please, just if I miss one, I beg your pardon, and feel free to just alert me. Next slide. So here's a little agenda of what I hope to discuss with you tonight. Hopefully won't take too much of your time. I want to talk about Washington County Home Rule Charter and our form of government here at Washington County and how you all fit into it. I'm going to spend the bulk of my time talking about Oregon Public Meetings Law and how that applies to you all and your service on this committee. I want to touch on Oregon ethics law because it's an interesting area that applies to all of you as public officials. And then finally, I'm just going to wrap up quickly with just 2 slides on public records law. Next slide. So Washington County is one of our 9 counties in Oregon that is organized as a home rule county. This means that pursuant to a 1958 amendment to the Oregon Constitution, counties had the right to adopt local charters that prescribed how the county will be organized, what powers it will have, what procedures it will follow, and who has those powers in administrating the county affairs. Washington County voters adopted a Washington County charter in November of 1962, and that became effective in the beginning of the new year in 1963. Like I said, there's only 9 counties in Oregon that have home rule charters. But the difference between the 9 counties that operate as home rule counties and the 27 that do not is actually narrowing over time as courts have issued legal opinions that effectively limit the power of home rule counties and expand the powers of non-home rule counties. And so we're coming closer and closer together as time goes on. But I still want to mention this because our charter is kind of like considered a little quasi-local constitution in a way. And it's always still a good place to go when you have any questions about the procedures or organization or authorities of our local county government. Next slide. I quickly just wanted to highlight some of the key provisions in our local charter. Section 20 says that the county can exercise all powers allowed or granted by the Oregon Constitution, and that and then Section 22, all legislative and administrative powers are vested in the Washington County Board of County Commissioners. Section 23 makes clear our jurisdictional authority and says that the local ordinances that we adopt here in Washington County do not apply within the incorporated cities, except for when we are acting as the local public health authority, which came into play quite a bit between 2020 and 2022. Mary, I saw you have your hand raised.
So I have a question about Section 23. Planning Commission includes members who are both inside cities as well as those that live outside incorporated areas. And if ordinances only apply to areas outside cities, why do we have sitting planning commissioners who live inside cities?
That's a really good question. There might be, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head. As you know, Mary, land use ordinances are also something that's not highlighted on this screen, but have very special and specific prescribed procedures. And it's not something that I practice regularly, but it could be I don't even want to speculate. It's something that I can follow up for you, though, if you like.
I would love to have that answered. Thank you.
You bet. Land use is a special type of power that we engage in and very prescribed. So I don't want to speak out of turn. There's some other sections here. One thing I just want to note is that Section 40 says that the board can delegate any authority reserved to it to other individuals, and they've done just that. By prescribing boards and commissions and also delegating authority to our county administrator in some circumstances. All of these broad powers are implemented through ordinances, which if you think of the charter like a constitution, the ordinances are like the laws that Congress would make and saying how things are done and implemented. Ordinances are our local laws. Next slide. So as I just mentioned, Washington County Board of County Commissioners have delegated certain powers to our county administrator, who's currently Tanya Angie, and Washington County operates under a council manager form of government. This is probably a form, a power structure that might be familiar to you because it's similar to what many private corporations are set out with a chief executive officer and then a board of directors who sort of sets policy and broad direction, but the day-to-day operations are implemented by that chief administrator. So that it's a very familiar form of power sharing. The county commission sits as like the board of directors and sets the general policy direction. And then our county administrator is delegated administrative authority to sort of make sure these functions and these broad areas are implemented in the business that we do every day. So that are there any questions about our form of government before I move on? Yes, Bruce.
So that means that the Board of Commissioners can overrule a decision by the county administration officer, the county administrator.
They certainly could. Yes, theoretically, yes, and practically, yes. I think, though, you would not see the county administrator acting in a way that hasn't either already been expressly delegated or given direction through another, a board order or resolution in order. But yes, I would be hard pressed to think of something today, but there's certainly, we've certainly, especially in the last few years, taken a look at some of the old delegations and procedures that have been out there and sort of, looked at them with fresh eyes and modified or repealed even in some cases. So yes.
Thank you.
All right, next slide. Now I'd like to turn our discussion to my second agenda topic, which is public meetings law. I always like to start when I speak on the public meetings law with just setting forth the purpose that is set forth in Oregon law for public meetings. And it's just right here on the screen, and I'm going to go ahead and just read it because I think it's important. And that says that the Oregon form of government requires an informed public aware of the deliberations and decisions of governing bodies and the information upon which decisions are made. It is the intent of the public meetings law that decisions of governing bodies be arrived to it openly. So I like to just read this because it sort of sets the tone for the rest of the discussion. As we go through the next several slides, whenever you have a question about whether something's a public meeting or whether, how much notice is required or what kind of participation is required, it's always important to remember that the Oregon legislature has said, we favor openness, transparency, and access to the decisions of governing bodies. So all substantive provisions of the public meetings law should be read with this policy in mind. And if you're on the fence, it's a close call, you should err to the side of openness and access. Minimally, as we'll discuss over the next few slides, this means that that meetings of the public body should be open to the public. The public should have advance notice of the time and place of a meeting and what will be generally discussed at a meeting. And meetings should be accessible to the public who want to participate and attend. Next slide. So who is required to hold public meetings? The public meetings law says that any governing body of a state agency, a regional government, a county, a city, a special district, or a municipal corporation must hold public meetings, and any agencies of any of these entities, including boards, commissions, subcommittees, and advisory groups, including the Committee for Community Involvement. Some of the key, not to get too wonky, but some of the way you determine if you're a public body subject to the public meeting law are two key factors. One, it is whether the body was formed pursuant to a state constitution, a statute, an administrative rule, an order, or an IGA, some sort of official act, and whether the members serving on that body have the authority to make decisions or recommendations to another public body or to deliberate towards decisions or recommendations to another public body. Mary, I see your hand is raised.
Yes. So community engagement has told me that subcommittees of CCI are not required to maintain minutes.
Okay.
And from what I'm hearing, it sounds like our subcommittees should maintain minutes.
It depends on that really depends on that last thing I just sent to you is whether the subcommittees are formed by like an official act and the purpose for which they're meeting. Are they meeting to make decisions or deliberate on decisions, or are they formed for the purpose of information gathering? So it really is a little bit more fact specific. And I'd be happy to look into further details for you if you wanted to share. I think outside of this training, if you wanted to share some, or I can work with community engagement and get a little bit more clarity for you. But the other thing I just want to say is that, again, what we just talked about, when in doubt, it doesn't hurt to be more open and transparent than less.
I would appreciate more information. I would discourage you from working directly with community engagement because I think they really don't understand the CPO program, the CCI program. And if you do meet with them, I think it would be advisable to have somebody from CCI in that meeting as well.
Great. Bruce, I see.
Yeah.
Next.
Do the terms boards, commissions, subcommittees, and advisory groups have formal definitions that help somebody identify which of those we actually are?
No, again, it's agencies of these public bodies. So it's sort of subgroups, I guess is just a general term that are formed by an official act for the purpose of making recommendations or making decisions within their the authority for which they were formed. Does that make sense? I can't, again, it's a fact specific inquiry.
So as far as that goes, it makes sense. But for example, the boards and commissions are populated by people who are reviewed by staff and then approved by the county commissioners.
Right.
The CCI is the concept of the CCI is formed in the various resolutions and orders, but it is populated by people who are entirely volunteers and we have no formal assignment by the county commissioners. So in that way, we're different.
Okay. Sounds like you may be different.
So, and then the subcommittee line is if you are a subcommittee of one of the boards or commissions or a subcommittee of, I mean, that would imply that there's a committee that you're a subcommittee of, because we have subcommittees, but that's just because what we call them, not because.
Right. Again, right. The titles are less important than the factors that how you're formed by, is it by some sort of official act of another governing body or under the law, like the things that the law just says, these are public bodies, and the purpose for which you are meeting. Are you, are you working within, are you making decisions or deliberating towards decisions or making recommendations to another public body for decision making?
Okay, we have.
I know that's not very clear, but
no, that's okay. I mean, I can work with a complex sort of structure, but we don't really have any authority or power. All we can do is make basically suggestions. I guess you could call them recommendations, but there is no body on earth that is beholding to do anything that we say. And so, as we try to understand this business about the CCI and the CPO, I think there's still, from what I've heard, there still is not real clarity in my mind about, what it is we do. I mean, we're going to go on the assumption that we need to follow the public meeting law, but given that we're all volunteers with no approval of any governing body whatsoever, I'm just wondering where we are. And so I'll leave that, you can think about that maybe.
Yeah, I understand it. I have to admit, yes, I see your hand, Fran. I just want to follow up on Bruce's comment there. I must admit, I presumed that you were a board and commission formed by an order of the Washington County Board of Commissioners, but I see Fran saying yes and Bruce saying no. So that's
Fran,
definitely
go ahead. What you got?
something we'll need to figure out.
So if I may speak. Yep, I'm on CCI, which is the Community Citizen Involvement Advisory Council from state, DCLD. And in goal 1, it states that there has to be a CPO program of some sort. Washington County had adopted the CCI CPO program from volunteers. So in my mind's eye, and the objective of this group is to provide advisory group to the commissioners. And I can go back way back in our bylaws, and I can go back in the goal 1 to cite that if you like. So it is my belief that we are, according to goal 1 and ordinance, meet that obligation to goal 1 for Washington County. And 2 is we serve as an advisory group to Washington County commissioners. So that's my premise. And I can verify that with DCLD if you like. Okay, is that all right with everybody?
Well, yes.
But note that we are strictly a totally volunteer group. We're not like in some counties, they use their planning commission as their CPO CCI program. We do not.
There is a big difference there between a planning commission, which is assigned by an official act of the county commissioners, and this group, which has no real relation to any governing body in county government.
Okay, so not to go down the rabbit hole because we spent a lot of time on this, I'm just making the statement. How about if I take the action item to talk to the commission, the DCLD, and also the commissioners understanding do we meet these criteria? Is that okay, Courtney?
Oh, Fran, I don't think you need my permission for me to do that.
No, I'm just saying that I will report back. The second part of this is just, so somebody wrote down the CCI bylaws state that CCI is an advisory body to the board. That's what I remember too. It's in our bylaws. So the second part of my
forming you, I'm not sure who.
Yeah, anyway, I think that's from community engagement. The second part of this is when we talk about having, these are public meetings, but just FYI, for public information purposes, because we could not get internet or cloud storage to provide information. We do have the YouTube capability, but I had to fess up space on the cloud so that we could share information because we couldn't get it from community engagement. And I was willing to make it accessible to these CCI members. I'm not willing to have the entire world have access to all of these files. And the problem is that since we can't get it from the county community engagement, I don't want to be subject to some kind of legal action because we didn't make it available to the entire world. So we'll just bin that one, but just make sure that I'm not violating any of these requirements by allowing people to use the storage.
I'm not sure I followed your what is on your storage, just the ability to run the Zoom meeting.
We have a Google group a Google Doc repository that Fran has, and we've stored a number of files in there that are only accessible to the CCI members given explicit access. Okay.
Well, that sounds like a different issue. That sounds like those are potentially public records, which is a separate discussion from the public having access to your meetings. I think the public, as we can talk about, it's in like 2 more slides. When you give notice of your meeting, if they want to be on this Zoom, they would have access by having access to the Zoom link.
Yes.
Okay, but they don't have to have access to all of our notes and information. Is that right?
Not Absolutely not. You do have to keep, as I will talk about in a minute, and I see another note from Christina, you do have to, one of the obligations of public meetings law is keeping records and minutes. Those, in an ideal world would, like Washington County does, would be put, but we're, the big Washington County has those posted. But the more important thing is that if someone asked for them, they would become available, and not that they have to be accessible at all times.
Okay. And community engagement has also said this includes attendance rosters. So
Right.
I just wanted to clarify that. I can be quiet now, but I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't liable for something because I'm being a good guy.
No, not at all. And I appreciate the discussion. This is the exact kind of thing that actually makes, I think, these types of presentations more useful to everyone listening, because me just talking at words written on a screen isn't practical unless we put it in real practical situations. So I thank you for your input. Next slide, if you would, Christina. I want to talk about something that is sort of relatively new. I say relatively new in public meetings, but really it's a concept that arose out of a 2015 court case. So I guess that's really not that new, even though that just feels like a year or two ago. And that's the idea that a public body can violate the public meetings law through a series of private communications, even if you don't have a quorum of your public body involved in any one communication. And this is a concept we call serial meetings, which has been codified into law in House Bill 2805, which became effective just September of 2023. Let me touch briefly on this idea of quorum. I didn't mention it on the last slide. You don't have a public meeting unless you have a quorum of your public body members at a meeting, which means you can't conduct actual business unless you have a quorum. Usually a quorum is a simple majority. I'm not sure what your bylaws say, but it can be something other than a simple majority if you designate it as so. But like for the Washington County Board of Commissioners, 3 out of 5 of them constitutes a quorum. Coming back to this idea of serial meetings, I think the easiest way to understand it is if I just briefly touch on the facts of the case that this concept arose out of, and it becomes pretty clear what we're talking about. So the case was called Handy versus Lane County. And I am not sure if Lane County has 3 or 5 commissioners, but for purposes of my discussion with you today, I'm just going to assume they have 3. And what happened is that the Lane County received a public records request, and some of the records that were requested were potentially exempt from disclosure under the public records law because they were, about litigation, or they were confidential, or another exemption applied. So what happened in this case is the county administrator went ahead and called one elected commissioner and started talking about the public records request, and they started talking about how they might respond to it. After that conversation was over, he hung up, and then he emailed a second commissioner and had the same conversation about the same subject, about the public records request and how they might want to respond to it. So what you see happened here is that 2 board members who would constitute a quorum, they had the same discussion and were deliberating towards a decision, but just not at the same time. One was in a call followed by an email. This was challenged because the public didn't have notice of this discussion or deliberation, and they weren't invited to attend and listen. So the Court of Appeals found that this violated the public meetings law. Now, that case was overturned on other grounds, but ever since 2015, public lawyers who advise public bodies like myself have been following this rule and saying, do not have a series of communications that if you were together in one room would constitute a public meeting. Okay. This doesn't mean you can't, call one commissioner and say, what time was the meeting? Just who took the minutes? You can have conversations. You just can't have conversations that are making decisions or deliberating towards decisions or recommendations you might make as a full public body. Fran?
Sorry to be a pain, but
No.
so our shared drive is for collaboration amongst us about when we're putting forth a recommendation to the commissioners. Would that collaboration constitute this electronic written communication amongst participants?
It might be, and every board member has access to that.
From this body, yes.
Yes, it might.
Okay, I just want to make sure. You know,
Yeah, and I don't want to answer your question without knowing a little bit more about what you're discussing there or what the purpose is. I see Christina writing notes, but it might. It probably warrants a little look.
Okay, so let me just give two really quick ones so we understand where we are. One is, for instance, we will be making comment on, let's say, the LUT work plan. And we will be saying, here's what we're going to be recommending to the commissioners about the work plan, or some ordinance that's coming up. We're going to be making a recommendation to them. And we will collaborate via the shared drive on what that wording will be and what we're recommending. How would you interpret that?
It's possible that if you were deliberating towards a recommendation, that could be considered a violation of the public meetings law. I wouldn't say it's so much a serial meeting because you're all there. You're not having a series of conversations. You're not trying to avoid the quorum thing. The potential violation here would be that the public doesn't have notice or access to be witness and have transparency into your decision-making process and thought. So that kind of thing most likely would be better done in the public when you've properly noticed and convened a meeting. And that's a bummer because it makes your meetings longer. That's what you've described is a very efficient way of conducting business. But because we are public bodies and public officials, we're held to a higher standard, and go back to that very first slide again, that we favor openness and transparency and access. Yes, Jim. You're still on mute.
I have a question related to lawsuits. Since we're following the public meetings law and we're advisory committee to the commissioners as far as the CCI and then the CPO, would county council represent us if there was a SLAP lawsuit? Are you familiar with the term SLAP?
I'm not.
Strategic lawsuit against public participation.
Okay.
Sometimes we get threatened by developers and or home builders or property owners that they will file a suit against us. And so this is an important issue for us to see if the county council will represent us.
So my understanding is that if you were if you were a commission formed at the direction of the county and the Washington County Board of Commissioners, which we have a little question about that, but we think we are.
I don't think we are. I think
okay.
that the group was formed, but since it is entirely populated by volunteers, I think we're dangling in the wind.
Let me tell you this. Volunteer, your position as your status as a volunteer does not affect whether you are serving on a public body. You can be a completely uncompensated volunteer and still be both a public official and a member of a public body. You don't have to be compensated. You don't have to be an employee or have some sort of more formal relationship with the organization.
Okay.
Okay. So, Jim, I want to answer your question because I don't have the benefit of all of the facts necessary for me to give you a solid legal opinion. But I can tell you that the boards and commissions that are formed by the organization, if you are sued for something that is within the scope and duty of the purpose for which you were formed, that is most likely something the county would defend you for. Now, I have tried to keep my language caveated in the sense of it's going to be a fact decision. It's going to require an analyzation of the facts, some that we've identified here of, what exactly the status of the body is, but also what the basis of the lawsuit is. Is it something that you were authorized to and empowered to do?
Thank you. We would like some more details on this, if you can give us a little bit more.
Sure.
Not necessarily tonight, but a
right.
follow-up of sorts.
I think there's a lot of foundational questions that we need some clarity on before there can be follow-up. But I hear you, and I will definitely work with staff to get, we can get a list of really pointed, directed questions that we can look into. And some sort of foundational things. Paul.
You earlier used the term quorum when talking about HB 2805. Within CPO, we have this expression, power belongs to those who show up, because we don't know how many will be.
Sure.
So the number of members is not fixed in any way. So if it's not fixed, using the term quorum doesn't have a lot of meaning.
And I would agree with you. And I think that's probably, I feel very underwhelmed and underprepared, I guess is a better word, to answer your guys' questions, because again, I'm not familiar with the function or the structure status of CPO, but I feel confident telling you, Paul, that public meetings can only happen when you have a quorum to do business. You've probably all seen the Washington County Board of Commissioners cancel meetings because they don't have a quorum. You can't do business without your quorum. Like I said, generally this is considered, when a committee or a board or a commission is formed, it says it shall be 5 members, it shall be 7 members. It's always an odd number, right? So we don't get even numbers split. If you have 8, you could end up with a lot of 4-4 votes. And usually, again, a quorum is a simple majority, 5 of the 7, 3 of the 5, etc. Sometimes there's really large boards that have like 25 members. And so bylaws will say a quorum is 7, because getting 25 people to show up regularly to, meetings can be extremely difficult. So you might make a lower number so that business can go on. Ben.
Yeah, I think maybe where that question was going is getting to the definition of member, because so we in our CPO have typically followed the guideline of member in those cases means leader. So we don't have leadership meetings unless we have a quorum of people who have a particular role.
Okay.
So whether they're chair, secretary, member at large, they've been voted into some position.
Okay.
And so if we want to have a meeting of the leadership team and we can't have enough people, we kind of understand that that's when the quorum rule comes into effect. But I think what was being hinted at there is while we do take attendance for a CPO meeting, we don't attempt to define who is a member of a CPO, because there's no way to possibly have a quorum of all potential members of a CPO. That's thousands of people.
Sure. And when
So-
I say members, I mean members of the governing body, which you have just defined as the leadership body. It's not everyone who's a member of an organization. It's the governing body of, or also when you said leaders, what came to my mind are officers. It's the people who are empowered to take votes and make recommendations, make decisions, order things.
But that leads into the question that I posted in the chat, which is the opposite problem for CCI, that there is a steering committee. And when we were talking about what are the obligations of subcommittees, does our steering committee act legally as a subcommittee, and thus they can discuss things amongst themselves without a quorum? Or are they the leadership team, in which case, because for most actions we take, we're taking it as the CCI with a quorum of the CCI there.
It sounds like the subcommittees make recommendations to the whole body, which is a very familiar and similar way. But I would, what you've described, and again, give me grace in that I've not seen your bylaws, so I am not giving you a definitive answer. Your subcommittee is an informational gathering body that goes to the larger committee and says, this is our recommendation. And the larger leader, you said leader or CPO, I'm not sure what you call them here at CCI, who then take official votes, official actions, or no? Yes? Yeah. Who votes?
Yeah,
everybody?
so it is different because the CCI body is elected and appointed, however you want to think of
yes.
Representatives. But I do think for liability issues, we may need to clarify, is the CCI steering committee a subcommittee, or is it a leadership team?
Sounds like you do, and I can't answer that
how they meet may end up being a legally thorny issue. And we've gotten used to a system that works well. We just need to make sure that it's not a legal loophole that could get us in trouble.
Understood. Agreed. So, Bruce, I want to just do a time check. I had told you, I think 40 minutes, and we're already at 40 minutes because you all have great questions, and I am not even through the public meetings. I want to be respectful of your time.
Well, we want to be respectful of your time too. So this is a mutual concern, but we have time for you to finish your presentation. I think that what we need to do is work on a set of questions collaboratively that then you can go off and answer.
Yes, and I would be happy to come back and talk about them with more information.
Yes.
So
members, let's try to capture the questions because we've already identified that we don't have a clear answer at this point. So let's acknowledge that and just collect questions that will help bring clarity.
And to be clear, I'm not trying to ask you guys not to continue to have this two-way discussion. I think it's very useful. I just want to be respectful of your time. I know I'm not the only thing on your agenda, and you all have other things you probably need to get to tonight. So I just wanted to do a check-in.
Thank you, but you're the most important thing on the agenda. So
great. Yeah, if we could go to the next slide. Hopefully we can go through, we've sort of touched on these a little bit. I want to talk to you about some of the basic requirements of the public meetings law. And that is that we must, again, what we talked about in the first section there was that, it means that the public should have notice of your meeting. The public meeting law doesn't actually say what kind of notice, doesn't prescribe how notice should be given. It just very helpfully or unhelpfully, depending on your opinion, says notice must be reasonably calculated to give actual notice to interested persons. The best practices of this is that your notice should have the time and date. It should say the place. In your case, that's Zoom. Pre-pandemic, these were usually physically in-person meetings, and usually that meant the place had to be within your jurisdictional boundaries, so inside Washington County, which is pretty easy to do, but also should be a non-discriminatory site and a site that's accessible to anyone who might want to attend, which means not only physically accessible, but also if you know that you need an interpreter or other aids, that you make those things available. The good thing about the new virtual rule is that Zoom is largely accessible to most people as long as they have an internet connection. Again, the method of notice is not prescribed by the public meetings law, but it must be, again, meet that reasonably calculated to inform. That usually means written notice that can be posted or emailed. I got several notices of your meeting. We're lucky here at Washington County to have great staff who are really good at this and make sure that we meet these requirements. The advance notice of your meeting is also not prescribed in the public meetings law. The only thing that is definitely prescribed is that you have to have at least 24 hours, because you may have an emergency meeting with less than 24 hours, but only if you truly have an emergency. Doesn't arise very often, though. It seems like, in 2020, we had several emergency meetings because we had several public health emergencies sort of all at the same time. Next slide. I want to touch briefly on the content of meetings, conduct of meetings. It's probably not a problem can arise. I want to make clear that the public meetings law says that the public is entitled to attend and have access to meetings, but the law does not require the public to participate in meetings. A presiding officer has inherent authority to keep order and impose an testimony, the order of testimony, and the limitation of topics to be discussed, which is usually limited to the noticed agenda items. I want to make clear here that a public body cannot have a rule that says you can't record, either audio or visually record a meeting. So if you're ever in a meeting and someone tells you you can't, you have to put away your video camera or your phone, that's absolutely allowed under the public meetings law. I want to make clear here when I talk about, limitations on the of the types of testimony that can be heard. This doesn't mean that we can really stop people from saying what they want to say. You'll see at our public, what I mean by limiting the topics is, like, if you've been to a Washington County Board of Commissioner meeting, they have a time at the beginning where you can talk about anything you want. And then once they're in the meat of their agenda, you really can only talk about the agenda items if you're testifying. And then at the end, they have another just general section. Because we are public, we are constrained by the First Amendment, which means that sometimes people will show up and say things that are perceived as rude or perhaps offensive, but that is absolutely allowed. And, it's not something that we can prevent. Usually it's not that big of a deal. Usually most people come to public meetings to engage in a useful and efficient way. Next slide. We touched on this briefly too. The public meetings law requires for you to keep minutes and records of your meetings. These records should minimally describe who was present, any motions were made, and the outcomes of those motions, including who voted which way. There are some exceptions under the law. If you have a really big board, you can just do the totals. You should generally discuss or have a substance of anything that was discussed. This does not mean you have to keep verbatim notes like, Bruce said, Courtney said. It just, we talked about public meetings, just generally the members had questions. That would be the sort of about X, Y, and Z. That would be a true reflection of what was discussed tonight. You also have to keep a reference to any documents that were received or discussed unless they're exempt under the public records law. So this presentation should be reflected in your minutes, which means that someone could request it should they have an interest in seeing it. Next slide. An audio or video recording can substitute for written minutes, and Senate Bill 11 becomes effective January of 2024, which is in response to our new post-pandemic life where a lot of meetings are happening through audio, virtual mediums. And that law says that state boards and commissions that meet electronically must record and publish the recordings so they can be available to the public. I want to say right now, I meant to look it up and I apologize I didn't, to see if that also applies to local public bodies or just state boards and commissions. I did not have a chance to look it up, The Washington County Board of Commissioners, as you know, already does this. They post all their meetings, videos of their meetings. I don't know that this bill will apply to you all, but I can definitely, please add that to the list of questions, and I'll make sure I look up the Senate bill, which you wouldn't be in violation yet because it doesn't become effective till January. Mary. If you're speaking, I think you're on mute. I can see your hand, but I can't hear you.
Yes. So if you look into that, you probably need to check into, we have tried to post our recordings, and we are posting now on YouTube, but we've been told that the county website does not have storage availability for us to post our recorded minutes.
Okay.
Meeting recordings.
I will, we'll note that.
Thank you.
Mary, just so
the
you
minutes are
know,
published.
the YouTube link is posted in the minutes. So if folks click on that link, it will take you to the recording. So the recording itself is not on the website, but there's a link to the recording.
I'm aware of that. What we were told is that the YouTube does not satisfy the recording or the record keeping because it's not internal to Washington County. Our minutes or our recordings that are on YouTube could be taken down at any time. The county does not have control over that, so it does not qualify. We still have to have written minutes because there's no way for the county to maintain the meeting recordings for us.
All right, and that really ends my discussion on public meetings. I'm just going to go ahead and skip this slide in the interest of time. It usually leads to good discussion, but I think we've already had some very, very good discussion, and I believe you all understand the concepts about, quorums and what you're discussing and is those things. So next slide, please, Christina. I was now going to talk to you a little bit about Oregon ethics law. Bruce, would you like me to continue, or do you guys want me to maybe come another time to talk about this?
Why don't we, because this gets into some kind of thorny stuff, and it would be very helpful to know if we really are under the dictates of this, or if we're not under because I don't know. I don't feel like a public official in this role. And so why don't we defer this to a future conversation after we've had a chance to give you the questions and work
Okay.
the foundational issues.
That works for me if it works for you. What I can do, Christina, you can probably stop sharing then, because it sounds like what we have agreed to is that you all, I believe, I was not keeping notes because I was, presenting. We'll have a list of questions that you will send to me, and I will do some follow-up work, and then I will work with Christina and Bruce to get back on a future agenda to come and talk about the answers to those questions and anything else I learn about your organizational structure. And then should we conclude that we are a public body, which I presumed you were, then we can go into some of the Oregon ethics stuff that would be applicable to you as all public officials. Does that sound good? Well, I do want to thank you for your lively discussion. I see Virginia has a hand up.
We're aware that the county attorney's office is still studying the CPO system to inform the OEICE response, their plan for our future. I don't know if you're involved in that, and I expect you can't tell me anything, but I just was wondering if you were aware of that. The meeting where the OEICE is going to present to the Board of County Commissioners has been postponed from September to November to January because your office has to study it. And it's keeping us on tenterhooks. So I don't know what the hangup is, but if there's anything you can do to prod them so that we at least get into the January agenda for the BCC work session, it would be helpful. And maybe you can take some of the questions and what you've learned this evening back to the county attorney.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but I can certainly do some follow-up with Brad Anderson and find out more. I haven't been involved in those discussions.
Right. Well, we're sort of in limbo.
And yeah, I understand.
Okay.
All right. Well, I will wait to hear from Bruce or another one of your members.
The steering committee is meeting either legally or illegally tomorrow. And we will work these questions around and get back to you. I certainly appreciate you taking the time to come and visit us and to go over these questions with people who clearly have a vested interest and a stake in some of the outcomes. And at the heart of all of this is our desire to let the residents of the county have an influence on at least the land use laws that affect their lives. So.
Well, and I want to thank you all for your time and your very thoughtful and considerate questions. I do apologize for not knowing more about this coming in, but I rest assured, more to come.
More to come. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Have a great evening.
Much appreciated.
Bye.
Okay, now we can get on to the heavy duty of approving the minutes. Mary and I went through them and did some updates. I sent them out. I didn't receive any comments back, so I assumed that everybody is good. Mary?
I found a couple of typos that I didn't catch the first time through. Kirsten Lurtz, her first name is misspelled in the section where she did a presentation. It should be spelled K-I-R-S-T-I-N, not E-N. And there are two places where that was misspelled. So if that correction can be made, I am willing to make a motion that the minutes be approved.
Virginia, you got your hand up.
Yes. On page 3, down by the bottom, under the discussion on communications, that note needs to be removed because it seems to be working again.
Okay, but that wasn't true at the time that the minutes were written.
Correct, but I just checked it today, and you can sort. Like 4M appears at the end, but everything else seems to be in the correct order.
It seems to be a moving target.
Yeah. But there's no point in having that note when it worked for me today, but I don't care.
Okay. So we have minor things that we can fix. Mary has a motion to approve the minutes. Anybody got a second?
Sure. Second.
Didn't you seconded it? Any more discussion? No. Okay. All in favor of approving the minutes, do something. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 10. Okay, got 11. Anybody opposed? Okay, put your hands down. Anybody opposed? Boom. Okay, 11 zip. We approve the damn minutes. Okay. Goes on to I want to ask somebody. Eric, I'm turning your microphone on. Can you enter things into the chat for this meeting?
I'll give it a try. Let's, no, it says chat disabled.
Okay. One of the, I don't want to spend a lot of time right now unless it's easy, but when we set up these minutes, we should enable the attendees to at least see the chat, if not write things. Mary, what do you got?
I have comments on your idea to let the attendees use the chat. I think we can only, well, to see it, but if they're going to start entering stuff, there needs to be a specific person assigned to monitor that. And I think a better way of allowing attendees to engage is to allow time at either the beginning of the meeting or the end of the meeting for attendees to make comments.
Okay, that's on the steering committee discussion for tomorrow. Okay, thank you, Mary. So that brings us to the discussion of the and likely approval of the 120 day development application review letter. So I would like somebody else to lead this discussion. Jim, what do you got?
Well, I was hoping that we would have introductions. We have a new member or a new person who's attending the meeting today. CPO8 has followed the rules, the suggestions by the Community Engagement Office, and on Sunday they reactivated. They approved some bylaws. They came up with some acting officers. So I'd like to introduce Linda Gales Merton, and she has a little story to tell about this. If she's there.
I'm here.
Busy. Okay.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. I am here with Patty Perrin, who is also as far as we're concerned, the acting vice chair. And we got involved in reactivating CPO8. It was very active for many years. And we received from the county, we received a reactivation protocol, which we followed. There were 3 of them. We had a posting of a public meeting at a week before. We had 13 members. We then voted, revised the bylaws that we had that were extant, and we voted on acting chairs and set a new meeting for January that would be a public forum as well as was this one. We submitted that to the county yesterday, and today we got a letter back from the county with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more steps that we have to follow, apparently. So it's a bit daunting. I have to say I'm not understanding this, given that it's a reactivation of a CPO that was already active. It seems to be, I may be wrong, but it seems to be that we're being treated by the county as if we were a brand new CPO. But I will leave that to others to decide. But we're very happy to be here. We hope we can be a member of this body and be a long-term force for good and a voice for our communities to do the right thing. Hi, Jim.
I want to thank Jim for taking the initiative and helping CPO8 get going. That was a good initiative, Jim. Thanks a lot. And I think that Christina did point out that there's a few more elements to the process than was initially understood, but I'm sure that none of them are really difficult to follow, and we are committed to helping you get through them. So, Gretchen.
Hi, I'm not really here for the meeting, but Linda, I was one of the two people that started CPO 4K, and I know of what you speak of all of the hoopla that the county has. They didn't want us to be created. They fought all the time. So, Linda, please feel free to get a hold of me when I'm done recuperating from surgery.
Thank you, Gretchen. I will do that. And please get well soon.
Jim, what do you got?
Well, there's things happening between now and the 3 months that the county's now saying that it's going to take before they're officially recognized. And I'd like to empower the CPO, the acting CPO 8 group to participate as they can, presenting, testifying before the Planning Commission or before the Board of Commissioners and all that. I want to, I think this body can advise the county that, we'd like to see CPO 8 activated as soon as possible and empowered to participate fully. Whether they've jumped through all the hoops yet or not, they should still be able to communicate and participate and engage as much as they can.
Thank you. Fran, what do you got?
Yeah, what I'm saying is, Jim, are you suggesting that we maybe pass a resolution to do that, make that statement, or send a letter or whatever?
That would be helpful. I think that would be helpful. I think it would be helpful for CPO 8, and I think it would be helpful for this body to help in the reactivation process. We have another activation that might be happening in other parts of the county, and I think that it would be good for this group to provide that kind of advice to the board and to the CPO that's trying to reactivate, CPOs that are trying to reactivate. So I guess I'd like to make a motion that we refer this to the steering committee tomorrow, and their meeting tomorrow, to put together a letter advising the county that we support the reactivation of CPO 8, acting at this point, and hopefully in 3 months they'll be official to participate fully. They have a big issue they need to testify on here in the next month or two. So I want to empower them. And that's part of our mission statement, is to encourage and empower. So,
well, whether it's a formal CPO or a group of citizens, I mean, we still take the message that they have and forward it on. Now, whether we approve the message as a body is another matter, but we certainly encourage everybody to do it. And so, Mary, what do you got?
I would be interested, if we're going to put this on the steering committee agenda for tomorrow, I would be interested in seeing a copy of the communication that went out to CPO 8.
Okay.
From community engagement.
Okay.
Christina, is that
If
something
I
that...
may interject here, I think folks are speaking under assumption. So there's nothing preventing anyone in the CPO area to provide public testimony on any board or commission, or to board or county commissioners. The communication in regards to the reactivation is that there wasn't notice given to every person in the CPO that has requested notice of meetings. Although a meeting notice was posted, it did not go out to that listserv that has been actively engaged, or there's no way to verify that it went to every single person that has actively requested meeting notices for that area. And so although there was a meeting held and there was elections happening, we still have to go to the process of notifying all residents in that CPO area that the reactivation is happening, that are interested, that there is going to be elections, and that if other folks are interested in leadership positions, that they're able to have notice to be able to put their hat kind of in the ring to do so. And so, going back to what we were talking about with public meeting laws, we have to give notice to folks. And folks that have been registered on, the Constant Contact or Nextdoor may not all have received that notice.
Good point. Mary, what do you
And
got?
we went through this process with CPO 12F and there was no issues. It's the exact same process that we did with CPO 12F to be reactivated earlier this year.
So Christina, is it possible to get a copy of the communication?
Absolutely. I sent the
Okay.
communication and I can forward you that communication.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anybody else have something? You still got your hand up, Mary, or are you good?
And lastly, Bruce, I think you can speak to what that reactivation process looks like in a meeting setting. You were present for the CPO 12 activation meeting and also the election. So there is a thorough process that we as an I participate in with that CPO to be activated. So it's not necessarily a conspiracy against the group. It's following a process so that everyone has the opportunity who is interested to participate.
And you're right, Christina. It is that. Since it is a process, though, it kind of came as a little bit of surprise. Jim, what do you got?
I made a motion about this going to the steering committee tomorrow. I'd like to see that seconded. I'd like to see it discussed and moved forward, so it does get discussed by the steering committee tomorrow.
Anybody got a second? Fran seconded it, looks like.
I second.
Okay, so this will be a subject of conversation at the steering committee meeting tomorrow.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. Well, that's exciting. And so welcome, Linda and Patty, was it? The friend
Right.
welcome. And the saying that Paul gave earlier, that the world is run by those who show up, is certainly true. I have no idea at this point in time what a quorum is, other than a majority of the people in a given room or Zoom meeting. It's I hope we didn't open a can of worms, or at least if they're friendly worms. Okay, so now we have the 120-day development application review letter, and who would like the privilege and honor of discussing it? And it's not me.
Oh, Fran, go ahead.
What, you got to unmute.
Yeah, Mary, if you want to present it, that would be awesome. I just crafted the, starter, and then everybody chimed in with this collaborative.
And I think it speaks for itself. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read it. It is a draft. If somebody would like to add something, subtract something, make changes, now's your time to do it. And otherwise, I think we're probably ready to move on it and get it in the mail.
I call the question.
So I move that the letter be approved as submitted in the agenda. We need a second.
Second. Second, it was.
Oh.
Okay.
Mary Lou seconded before I did, so Mary Lou Oberson has seconded.
So Bruce, you want to call the vote?
Let's have a vote of everybody who is in favor of sending this letter.
We have a little discussion of it.
Oh, so let's have a little discussion of it.
I'd like to see it discussed at the steering committee meeting tomorrow.
Okay.
You know,
With
exactly who it's going to and making sure we're crossing the right things. And if we're CCing anybody, that all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted.
Let me ask a question first, Jim. Does the steering committee need to have a vote by the CCI first? Because I don't want to hold up the whole thing for yet another month.
Yeah, so I'm fine. That's just like an amendment to the motion to approve it, is to have the steering committee take another look at it tomorrow.
Well, and I liked your suggestion to make sure that we send it to the right people. So the intention is not to change the letter text, it's to make sure that it is properly presented. Okay, Virginia.
I've been sort of absent from the world for a few days, and I did not weigh in on this when I should have. But I find the first paragraph a little confusing, and I'd like to take a stab at discombobulating it, because our support is not for the writ of mandamus process. Our support is for the concerns, and it isn't stated what those concerns are. I just like to take a stab at making that a little more powerful, and I will pledge to attend the steering committee meeting tomorrow and bring my suggested rewrite. So okay. Pardon my previous absence, and let me just try to do a little wordsmithing and make it more direct.
Fran?
I love you, Virginia, but I got to tell you that we went through 3 or 4 different iterations.
I understand, and I throw myself on your mercy, but in the interest of making this effective, I don't want to change very much.
I understand. Okay.
And I won't if you don't want me to. I'm happy to back out of it. I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, no, it's okay, because we went through 3 or 4 iterations about half the group wanted it one way and half the group wanted another, and then this was the win-win solution. And I'd hate to see that we leave.
That's okay. Forget it.
No. If you want to, that's fine. I just want you to be aware of how much it took for us to get to this point.
I think Virginia is.
Just know that.
I in sort of deference to Virginia's editing skills, I'm curious what she would recommend. So would the group be comfortable with the steering committee discussing a minor modification for clarity's sake to the letter tomorrow at the steering committee?
Absolutely.
Okay. So Virginia, take out your red pencil and go at it.
Yeah, I'll work on it tonight, so yes. I'll be ready in the morning.
Good. Fran, you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I just didn't want to see it have to go through the grinder again.
No, I mean, I'd like the letter. I thought that as these kinds of letters go, it was really well done. Okay, so moving right along. Well, holy cow. That brings us to the subcommittee reports. And I'm still not sure why we call them subcommittees, since there isn't, well, this is the Committee for Community Involvement. So I guess it is a subcommittee. Okay, well, I've confused myself about that long enough, I guess. So the Communications Subcommittee report. Virginia, you got anything for us?
I'll even start my video, even though I look like crap. We talked about how we need to communicate, and in the absence of anything from OEICE of how we're going to be going forward, we just discussed all the different ways that we need to communicate. Mary might have a comment or two. She was there, and so was Eric. And we'd really love to have more CCI members join us, because communication is one of the very few tools we actually have. As Bruce said, we can't do anything. All we can do is communicate. And our meetings are fairly brief, and we try to keep them to the point. So when I send out an invitation, it would be nice to have more than 2 people respond.
But if we can get 2, we're pretty grateful.
Well, 3. You were there too, Bruce.
Well, yeah. I sobered up enough to come in.
Yeah.
So, okay. So we will be documenting the different ways that the CPO leaders can communicate out. And I will say that I am very excited to have received the lists of people who've signed up for the CPO newsletters for the different CPOs, who also said, yes, the CPO leaders can contact me directly. So we have close to 1,000 people now throughout all the CPOs who've said, yeah, I'll have the CPO leaders contact me directly without going through the county, which means we have to be really careful about how we use this power. And one of the things, for example, would be to only contact people using the blind carbon, the BCC addressing, so that everybody doesn't see everybody else's address, for example. So we need to think what this newfound ability is and how we want to responsibly use it. So maybe that should be a steering committee meeting thing also. Yeah, Rob.
Like, currently when we're approached through the CPO leader email kind of generic address for, someone who's interested in maybe being on the executive board, my only option is to answer them with my personal email.
Yeah.
Do we have any resources through the county in place where it can be, a CPO email that responds?
We're going to bring that subject up next month.
Okay.
So
we've been trying to browbeat all the CPOs to have a CPO@gmail.com email address for months, for years.
They do. Pretty much in the list that I've created of all the CPOs, every CPO has and is using the standard CPO.
Do you not have the CPO3@gmail.com?
We do, but that goes out to all 5 of us. And if I respond, I can only respond with my personal email.
Bingo.
Okay.
So that is what we want to wrestle a little bit with.
Okay.
Or until we get it. Okay. Fran.
Just one point, today, I didn't realize that the rosters for the meetings are public information. And so that would be, I saw some conversation about maintaining the email list that we have. And now that it's clear that the rosters for the meetings become available, I don't know whether the OEICE collects the information and publishes it anywhere, but that may be a delivery mechanism to our update, to our roster. You get what I'm saying, Bruce?
No.
Okay. We have on the shared drive a list, an email list, right? Now? Yes. Okay. When Courtney was presenting, she said that, or maybe it was Christina clarified, that the rosters of the CPO meetings are now made public, if I'm correct. That means that we could update our email list using the input from those rosters to make sure that we got them updated.
Let's see, Christina was in there first.
Yeah. So anyway, my point is that if I had the bandwidth, I would just write a real quick software, but if somebody else could do it, it makes it really sweet if we could just take the rosters and verify that we do or don't have that name on the list, and if not, then we could add it.
Okay, Mary?
I like your idea, Fran, although I'm concerned about the we. We as volunteers should not have to do anything to maintain lists, even though they are the lists that we can use for our CPO. I feel real strongly that that is something that needs to come out of community engagement.
It's something to talk about, I mean, I thought, let me see if I understood, that Bruce was saying we're now empowered ourselves by having this email list. And is it an email list that we maintain, or is that an email list that OEICE has provided us?
OEICE provides the list to us.
Ah, okay, never mind. I got it. Then I misunderstood. Thank you.
But for example, Virginia has been collecting CPO1 member names and along with her Cedar Mill News, and then has a list she can send out to. And so we have the official list of people who've said, yes, I want this through the county system. And then there's the list of people who have told one of the CPO officers they want to be contacted. And so we could put those two lists together. But as I think about it, it's like, I really want to be clear on what we're doing. And Christina, I welcome any comments. Do we have to there?
Guess not.
Well, no, I think Christina somehow.
Yes, someone took over the hosting on, I don't know if that was on accident, so I was unable to unmute myself.
Okay.
So with the email list, so the attendance rosters are published, but the contact information is not for participants because folks have to give permission to be contacted in order for them to receive email notices. So it wouldn't be possible or wouldn't be okay to contact people without their permission. And so therefore, when the attendance rosters are published, it's just those who are present, not their contact information. And folks can elect or ask to be or give permission to be contacted via an email to us, to OEICE, or they can sign up through the constant contact.
So I noticed in getting into this meeting that we needed to enter our email address to get in. Did anybody get into the meeting without entering their email address? Okay, that's what I thought. So Christina, is that a new element of the meeting tracking?
Yes, so I activated that before this meeting today. Because people are entering their email doesn't necessarily mean that they're giving permission to be contacted. The reason I asked for emails to be entered to enter the meeting is so that we can track folks. For example, last meeting, we had an individual who wanted to participate, who expressed interest in participating, but did not leave contact information. Yeah. And so I was unable to follow up with them. And thankfully, that individual followed up with others in this group outside of the context, which made it possible to gather information. But that's why I did that, so that it would be helpful to track attendees and their contact information for follow-up.
That was a really good idea. Thank you very much for doing that. Let's see, where are we going here? Communications. Any more from the communications subcommittee? Hearing. Oh, yeah.
No.
Okay. So Paul, the person who called in, got in contact with us. Have they been participating with you in any discussions in the climate adaptation world?
I've had no direct communications other than a few emails, in some cases forwarded emails from somebody else. So the formalism of the committee is not complete by a long shot. I am still receiving little tidbits or nuggets, might call them, with respect to climate from various members of this group. And for the most part, I've tried to respond to each one, giving my thoughts about it, whether it was germane or not, and how it may inform us when it comes to deliberating. But since we haven't had a formal meeting yet, it would be premature to say that we've made any kind of progress.
Fair enough. Okay, well, let's not force you to make up stuff. I don't know why I have such a hard time saying significant natural resources subcommittee. Jim?
Okay, first thing I want to do is say that I got an email today from the city of Tiger, and they're going to have a discussion in a couple of weeks on a Monday, I think it is, about climate emergency. So here, my local jurisdiction, the city of Tiger, refers to it as a climate emergency, and I will be attending. I don't have anything else on my agenda at that time, so I'll be attending that, and we'll relay the information to Paul. Now, as far as the Significant Natural Resources Subcommittee, we did meet, and mostly we discussed the fact that, to my chagrin, and I'm really miffed by this, because I asked at a CCI meeting, maybe some of you remember, when we had Teresa Cherniak, I asked her if the clear and objective standards would affect outside the UGB, and she had said yes. And but the county went ahead and the county went to the legislature and asked for a bill, and our state representative from Forest Grove granted them what they wanted. So let me read to you what our attorney said in response to the questions we had, because this was kind of a surprise. So this is from Ken Dobson. I saw your email asking about LCDC's amended enforcement order. This year, the Oregon legislature amended the needed housing statute so it only applies to lands within the urban growth boundary. Because the LCDC's enforcement order is based on the county's failure to comply with the needed housing statute, it needed to amend the order to reflect the change in state law. However, LCDC does not have a procedural mechanism to amend enforcement orders. Therefore, it had to withdraw the existing order and replace it with a new one that only applies to land within the UGB. This was done at an LCDC meeting on November 2nd, so earlier this month. I participated in the hearing remotely just to make sure that the new enforcement order wasn't changed beyond what was needed to comply with the new state law. The new order is identical to the old one, except that it no longer applies to land outside the UGB. I'm disappointed, not with Ken's action, not with Ken's thing, but I'm just disappointed that the enforcement order isn't going to affect most of Oregon outside UGBs. So that's really the report for today. If Jill, I also have, could do a screen share, and I'll have it more finished in a couple of days. I have 270 species on the bird and critter list from around the county with input from a number of citizens, plus some government officials. So instead of screen sharing that today, I will try and get that out pretty soon. It needs to be looked at by a couple of professionals before I send it out to people. Any questions?
Thanks. I've always understood, reflecting back on Teresa Cherniak's comments, I was always under the impression that the only lands that are affected by this decision are those within the urban growth boundary and not in the jurisdiction of a city. So I was not expecting them to be rural in nature. So that's my comment. Fran?
I'd like Jim to finish his response to that first before I bring up my point.
Bruce, we need clear and objective standards inside and outside the UGB. We don't want the planning department, the developers, the landowners, home builders, property owners to get preferential treatment, to get subjective treatment. We want it to be objective treatment. And that's, Teresa said, yes, this would affect the whole county. The clear and objective standard, they do an ordinance going to affect inside and outside. So I'm still trying to get a good understanding of exactly the way things are going to move forward.
Okay.
So 2 points. One is, I also want to make sure that when we do the goal 5 inventory update, I'm on the technical advisory committee there, that again, that this applies to within as well as outside of the UGB, or at least a very clear statement up front about what it covers or not. Okay.
Well, Teresa was very clear. This is only the inventory is only being done inside the urban growth boundary.
Yeah, I understand. I just want to make sure that we always have it clear for everybody as a reminder. Okay. But a separate issue. This is good news. I don't know if you know that I'm on the Friends of Cooper Mountain Nature Park group, and we have been pressuring Metro for the last 2 years because all these public funds were collected for bond measures, and Metro was not putting them to use. And now the Washington County Commissioners just approved $1 million investment in the Cooper Mountain Nature Park acquisition of properties using the Metro dollars. And we have a property owner who has, I believe it's 200 acres up on Cooper Mountain. And what we're looking at is I'm working with Beaverton to find the acreage that's along the creeks and other areas which are riparian areas. So it becomes a win-win. Builders don't really want to build in the ravines and there. And we could restore, keep that intact. The big question is there's a road that may be crossing it. I'm going to make sure that we have wildlife crossings at the very least there. But the good news is our county commissioners actually did respond, and we're working with, there's a landowner who we may be able to, what do you call it? An agreeable landowner who's a willing seller. We believe, we'll see. But it's really good news that if we keep doing it and we keep working hard on this kind of issues, that the people's voices are heard and activated on. And congratulations, everybody who worked on this. I will report back on it, what the actual physical results are over time.
Mary Lou.
This is for Jim. Jim, did you forget to add me to the significant natural resource committee?
Yes, I did. I thought I communicated that to you that I forgot, but I will get you on there from now on.
Oh, good. Okay, thanks. That's it.
And Jim, what do you got?
I also want to discuss a meeting that happened 3-4 weeks ago. I think it was last month in Hillsborough, and Bruce, you were there, and Joe was there, and Rob was there, and property owners. It was a meeting, actually it was 2 meetings from 3 to 5. It was property owners who have significant natural resource land on their property. And the county was having their meeting with them to explain what they're doing, what the inventory was all about, what the enforcement order's about. And it was a very intense meeting. There were some people who were very upset. And it's a process that the county is going through. After that, there was more of a public meeting for people to gather information and to talk and answer questions who weren't property owners. I took some notes. I took some photos of all the comments. I guess I could share them sometime with people. But it was so far the county in their procedures, their process in updating the Goal 5 codes has only been talking about process so far. Here it is, late November, and we haven't seen any codes, any clarified clear and objective standards yet. They have to have them. They're supposed to have them by October 1st of next year. So it's a process that has yet to unfold. All they've really done so far is dealt with process and communicating with us what their plans are, but they haven't really, nothing's hit the ground yet as far as what solid they're going to do to look at it. So it's going to take a bunch of effort on our part to focus on what they put forth when they put it forth.
Yes, it will.
I also, by the by, and Ken can collaborate this as Eric, I heard that there were like well over 100 people who, and they couldn't even get in the door. It was so crowded. And so there was not a, I think they should have had a second session or something of that nature, because a lot of county residents and couldn't even get in. And it was, if I remember, a really rainy day and stuff. And I agree with Jim. I'm on the technical advisory committee, and so far several of us have complained to each other that it's only been about process. There's no interaction so far, and no true inventory numbers or anything come out yet. So that's where we stand.
I agree with Fran. I think I counted 130 people there.
The room was certainly packed. I don't think anybody was excluded from being in the room, and there was quite a number of questions having to do with uncertainty as to what's going on, and what the net effect would be. So I think that's all we can really say at this point in time. We'll look forward to the next report. Anybody else got a significant natural resource thing to share? Very good. Then I will go on to the CPO re-envisioning subcommittee, which essentially there is nothing more to report right now. We're working on refining the list of the component pieces of the CPO program so we can ensure that whatever direction the program goes in the future, that all the valuable aspects of the program are maintained in some capacity or another. That's it. Mary, anything more to add?
No.
Okay, then that takes us to the holy cow, that takes us to the CPO Leaders Roundtable. So Virginia, you want to say something about CPO 1?
Sure, I will. Actually, we canceled the November CPO 1 meeting because selfishly I chose to attend the book event for, and here I have a visual I can share if I can dig it up. Dr. David Lewis, who has written a book about the Native people in our area. Hold on, there we go. Sorry. Tribal Histories of the Willamette Valley by David G. Lewis. And I was able to go to the opening at the former Washington County Museum, now called Five Oaks. And he's been doing research for 20, 30 years. He's a member of the Grand Ronde tribes, and he's about the only person who's been doing scholarly research on what the lives and history of the Kalapuya people are. So that's where I was for the CPO1 November meeting. For our December meeting, there was a flurry of conversation on the Cedarville News Facebook group about crosswalks that were needed in the area. And so this is why we don't plan out our whole agendas for the year, because we like to be responsive to what the neighbors are talking about. And a bunch of them were talking about crosswalks. So we got some pushback from LUT because they're busy in December, but we managed to get a couple of representatives from the Urban Road Maintenance District, and hopefully we'll get a couple of the committee members from the Urban Road Maintenance District Advisory Committee, also known as ERMDAC, and we'll get some new neighbors to come and attend our CPO1 meeting, and maybe one or two of them will stick, you never know, because we promised them that this is something CPOs do, and that we can teach them how to put their requests on the map, and we can share information about what it takes to get needed pedestrian safety improvements. So our program has come together over the last week. And as I said, that's why we don't like to make up a year's worth of agendas, because we want to be responsive and draw our neighbors in.
There we go. CPO3, anything?
We have the ongoing drama with the Portland Golf Club and the Fannel Creek Trail, and that's still essentially in an application evaluation status by DSL and Army Corps and Clean Water Services. We did have a meeting with Clean Water Services today to get some clarification on, just what they were responsible for. And we did get them to agree to come out and actually do a physical site visit with us, which we felt was kind of a win. And, we've had great support from our Commissioner Phi. She actually has, helped connect us with some people at the county level to get information and some answers. So that's been really helpful. We also are having, continued speeding issues in the Garden Home area and serious, traffic stuff. People going off of Garden Home Road into private property, drunk driving, etc. And so we had Washington County sheriffs come speak to us about that, and basically they implied that Garden Home Road and that stretch between 92nd and Olson is too dangerous for them to patrol. And but I've had a couple of back conversations with some of the traffic safety people for the county, and we're working on getting a trailer, one of the speed trailers, set up, and looking into, there's no money for it from the county per se, but we're looking at getting a community funded radar sign, the flashing one that tells you when you're going above the posted speed limit. So those are our current works in progress. We actually had a great presentation too by our Garden Home History folks at Trader Joe's, and big turnout there on Veterans Day. It was a very nice event. Thank you to Stan Hausman and several others in the neighborhood there. That was really nice.
Okay, very good. Thank you. CPO 4B isn't active, I guess. CPO 4K, CPO 4M.
Bruce, we didn't, 4K didn't meet, and I'm out of commission, so
yeah,
I'll just shut up.
Okay. I noticed that the King City city manager, Michael Weston, is one of the attendees. If you're still awake, thank you for for joining.
Well, actually, I'm now on the planning commission out there, and we are having a workshop the Wednesday after of Thanksgiving. So I will kind of find out what's going on then.
Sure. I just turned your speaking ability on, Michael, if you want to introduce yourself and
Sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
I
Ken.
just want to say thanks. I appreciate being here and hearing what's going on throughout Washington County. So it's been enlightening. Thanks all.
You bet. Well, thanks for being here.
My pleasure.
Okay, so that's CPO 4M.
Okay, with 4M, we have a meeting tomorrow night. We had planned not to meet in both November and December because they're near the holidays, but because of this modified enforcement order, we decided to have a meeting. And plus also we'll have our big bird and critter list. And there's some other little things we can talk about too. So, you know, the enforcement order, we're going to get some more clarification on that and report to people and discuss what it means and how we might need to empower the people outside the urban growth boundary to be able to protect wildlife habitat there.
Well, tell that to Crown Zellerback. Okay, moving on, CPO 6.
Yeah, well, we're not going to do a November meeting. However, on December 7th, we do have an update being held by Jed Corley. He's the project manager for Washington County, the Land Use Transportation Group. He's going to give an update on the 209th Avenue project. And I don't know how many of you have been up there, but it's quite a mess. They're doing all that construction for part of the Hillsborough build out. And anyway, so Jed's going to be with us on December 7th. And that'll be a virtual meeting because I'm going to be out of town. So I'll be hosting that virtually. And the other item is, you know, we're looking for volunteers to help out with our CPO. With Becky's resignation, I've been kind of trying to pick up a few things. We're trying to get some more volunteers lined up. I've got a few leads on a few folks, but as you all know, it's hard to get people to step up a lot of times. But we're working on it. And then the only other major thing I think we might want to table this for a future discussion was we started this when Becky was still here, was trying to explore incorporation opportunities for the parts of the area of CPO 6. So I know nothing about it, how to do it, what the process is. I think a lot of you have probably been through this before, had questions, but now we have questions, and so we're kind of want to explore that avenue. So
I think that's very timely, and this is a good time to mention that in December, Chair Harrington and another commissioner, I can't recall who, is going to visit us to give a prelude to the update to the strategic plan. And then in January, the new assistant county administrator, Danny DANI, and I can't pronounce her last name off the top of my head. Any help would be appreciated. Will come and give us specifics on the strategic plan update and the points at which we can give input. And the reason this is important is because the strategic plan really sets the context for any conversion of unincorporated urban area in the county into some sort of domestication, whether it's incorporation or annexation. And I am no longer willing to just accept the county's line that they don't provide urban services and they aren't going to treat the urban unincorporated area with the special concern that it exists. I think that the county does provide urban services. They just don't want to provide unfunded urban services. And so Mary and I are interviewing Lisa Hamilton and Lori Waldo, both who led annexation or incorporation efforts for Bull Mountain and Bethany specifically, to get an idea of what they went through and what kind of support they got from the county, if any. in trying to deal with the governance issues. And so when the strategic plan review comes up, I think one of the things I'm personally going to be concerned with is that the county acknowledge you didn't create the urban unincorporated area, but you own it now. And so what are you going to do with it? How are you going to keep it going? So I don't want to get on a soapbox right now, but that's coming up for December and January. Strategic plan. It'll be exciting. Be there. Okay. Fran.
Real quick, I remember several years ago there was an effort to incorporate Aloha Reedville. And if you don't have that, I can probably dig through my old notes there about that, how that went, etc.
Sure.
And then the other question I have, Bruce, is I've been very interested in the strategic plan. And if you have any preliminary documents or an URL that I could go look at, I would be very much interested in researching that before the session, if that's okay.
Okay, I have some City by Design documents. Lori Waldo was the leader of that, and she said there's nothing online about it. So, but yes, we will be putting together a packet of whatever materials we can scrape together. Okay, so CPO 7, I guess, follows 6.
And that would be me talking about CPO 7.
Yes,
we have not met since June. And we have been kind of waiting, partly because we don't have leadership at this point, or leadership other than me. But we've been waiting for the fire district to actually open up their meeting rooms again for us to meet. And we originally were told that it would happen in the fall. And then when I checked in the fall, they said maybe November. And then now it looks like it's going to be January before they open them up to the public. But it sounds like there's going to be some changes in how the meeting rooms are handled. It sounds like anybody wanting to reserve a room needs to have a credit card that they can then take a $50 deposit. Apparently there have been problems with some damage that's happened with the meeting rooms. And one of the reasons they were holding off on doing things is they wanted to improve the security for the rooms. So that's kind of an update on that, but we're hoping to get things up and running soon rather than later. But later seems to be kind of what ends up happening. We may be on the same timeline as OEICE in their update for the CPO CCI program.
Okay. And we heard from CPO 8, 9, 10. Anybody from CPO 10 want to chime in? 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. CPO 15 is having quarterly meetings. That's CPU, that's you, Paul.
Yeah. The group was ready to conduct a meeting last Thursday, but literally nobody showed up except for the leadership and the presenters and the one sheriff deputy who was virtual. So they were completely set up, ready for a hybrid meeting, and everything was functioning. It's just that nobody showed up. So they decided to cancel the meeting and make the presentations next month, or in January rather.
Well, that I think is an appropriate end of the meeting. I do have one question. I heard today that the county is going to replace the Acorn streetlights with something else. Has anybody heard about retrofitting streetlights to eliminate those hideously light polluting monsters? And I assume, Jim, you're not raising your hand about that. Mary, have you heard anything?
I know in our neighborhood, the neighborhoods, the HOAs, I think, have chosen to replace them, and they are much nicer. It surprises me that the county would be doing anything, because the county's not going to want to foot the bill for it.
Yeah.
So
I was okay. So Jim, what do you got?
I have two things, actually three things, but first I want to thank Christina for all her support, knowledge, and help, and good luck in your future endeavors. And the other is, Fran, I want to compliment you on your headwear and hear what you can tell us about life in Hawaii these days.
Actually, I was going to speak up about tree keepers. I'm assuming that when you do the roll call that I could talk about tree keepers. Yes, the activities director here, we're all family, and they do all kinds of wonderful things in creating the flower headdress, which they know I like so much. But being in Hawaii, by the by, allows me to learn a lot about, for instance, we have some new laws that they're putting down for housing affordability and the houselessness people. And then I bring that information to Oregon when I participate in the housing production advisory work as well as other things. So just because I'm 3,000 miles or 2,500 miles away does not mean I don't get to participate in both afoot on each side of the ocean. But from tree keepers, there are just three things I wanted to bring up. One was that because of the weather, we're right now, this time of year, we don't do our tree inventory. So it gets kind of quiet, but we have about 2,000 trees in our tree inventory, and we published information about it. Second is Mary Lou has let us know that there's been a significant increase in the number of development applications just recently, and it may be because of this recent decision, et cetera, but she's been going to a lot of neighborhood meetings and stuff like that, and some more on the platter. So if anyone wants to help with helping Mary Lou attend this myriad of meetings, please let us know. And the third thing is, and I'd like to make a presentation, Bruce, and to the CCI. We're starting up two programs. We call it the schools program versus the community programs. In the schools programs, there are two things. A lot of the school districts don't maintain their trees anymore, whether watering them in the summer or arborists or anything. And so we're going to try to adopt a policy or procedure that one of the volunteers has done out in the Beaverton School, where the community takes care of the trees. And with input funding possibly from the recent IRA ODF funding grants, we could do that. If any of you and any of the other CPOs know schools or people in the community who want to help their schools maintain their trees with some help from arborists and whatnot, please contact tree keepers. The other one is we're going to pick a target schools, preferably in like the low equity areas, where we will we're going to look at maybe planting new trees or significantly protecting trees that are on the school campuses, i.e. don't cut down a bunch of trees to put in more modules, but rather figure out how to make the modules more efficient so that the children can play in the shade, because we're hearing a lot of children don't want to go outside because it's too hot to play. There are no shade trees. So these tree programs will be county-wide, and we're going to be kicking them off. We have a big collaboration of other agencies that we're going to work with on these programs. So if you want to have maybe some literature from us, we can make a publication. And you can announce it in your CPOs when we're ready to kick them off. And the Beaverton facilities director is definitely interested in participating, certainly in these things. Yeah, we just need to get interested. Doesn't mean he's going to do it, but we're going to kick it off. We all know how long it takes to get these things to go.
A long time. Well, thank you. I'd like to echo Jim's expression of appreciation for Christina. Sort of behind the scenes, she has been taking a lot of CPO and CCI archival material and getting it on the web, which has been a grind, and we will benefit from having that. So thank you very much for that, and all the other stuff that you have done that we may not know about, but you've been busy doing it. The Boards and Commissions open house was a success, and it benefited my endeavors in the CCI. And I appreciate it very much. And I think collectively we wish you well in whatever you choose to do in the future.
Yes.
Echo.
Okay. And with that, I bid you all adieu for the evening, and we will be back talking strategic plan next month
When is the steering committee tomorrow?
at 11
a.m.
11 a.m.
Okay.
Does that work for you? I mean, that's the time it's been.
Look at the calendar.
Bruce, would you send me a link?
Is that Gretchen? Yes.
Yeah.
And because next Wednesday is the 4th Wednesday of the month, not the 3rd Wednesday, even though this is the 3rd Tuesday, tomorrow is the 4th Wednesday, I think I need to create a new Zoom link to send you. So I will make sure to get that done. So I'll send it to everybody who might conceivably be interested.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Good night, everybody.
Hi, everyone. I will stand back if folks have questions.